Yeah, we're here to approach a kind of a difficult subject that's been a burden to a lot of us in the open source community. And I'd like to report back a little bit of our findings and our advice and our guidance. And in this context, I'm the chair of the OSGeo Incubation Committee, where our goal is to help projects not suck or not be embarrassing on the internet. And it's a real opportunity for me to give back to the community that supports me. I'm a product owner at GeoCat. I'd like to thank my employer, GeoCat, for the opportunity to speak with you today. And we also have Yvonne.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Ivan. I'm a freelancer and I do Glio, which is a tiny library.
Uh, so, I work on GeoCat Map, which is our product based on GeoServer. I'll be using GeoServer examples for security vulnerabilities today. That way, I'm not picking on other people, I'm picking on myself. I'm based out of Canada, Victoria, and we're going to talk a little bit about being Canadian today. So, to start with, I'm sorry. Um, and that's one of the things that people know about Canadians. So if I'm walking and I bump into a chair, I'll be like, turn around and I'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry," to like a piece of furniture. That this is part of the Canadian identity. But what you don't realize is that there's a range to "I'm sorry" that you're gonna learn about today. Yeah. So here's a place where I got to say I'm sorry. So I was getting, I don't know, pestered and bothered about security vulnerabilities. And I said, I don't care about CVEs because I didn't. I wanted to care about fixing the actual problem, not about these little numbers and stuff. Who cares about that? I wanted to work on making my software more secure. I also didn't want to talk a lot about security vulnerabilities in public because that might upset my user community and they'll start thinking, oh, this project's terrible. I better go and retreat to a project that doesn't tell me anything. Um, I didn't want to talk very much about vulnerabilities. I wanted to actually fix them. So unfortunately the response I was getting from like security researchers or stuff is really what's the right word, entitled, I guess, demanding that I provide a fix or that they would disclose publicly. And this really came across as entitled kind of bullshit behavior. Like, you're not a paying customer, you're a member of the community. I'm a community leader. I'm here to support you. I can support your developers fixing a problem. um, I can introduce you to commercial providers such as my employer that can fix a problem on your behalf. So, like, really, this is a poor community interaction, and it doesn't follow our published security policy. Indeed, it falls into the trap of assuming a product vendor relationship. However, I do care about communication, which is why I do things like talk in public. So this is at the level where the "I'm sorry" means, kind of on the scale from bumping into a chair to, well, we'll get to 10 later. This is at the scale where "I'm sorry, we're having some communication trouble. Maybe we can slow down and talk and communicate a little bit better." Um, yeah, click. So a little bit of an aside, how vulnerabilities are reported. We get a researcher. Who knows where they come from? These days, sometimes they're an AI bot. They come up with a report, and their goal is to submit it to an authority. The original authority is this MITRE not for profit. It's probably been defunded by now. Or it might be a national authority, such as this DVD from the Dutch one, or Inscribe, the Spanish national authority. Sorry?
Yeah, I know you're sorry because it's in Thib. I'm sorry we're having this conversation.
Thank you. That's great. And this numbering authority produces, strangely enough, numbers, these little CV numbers, which are assigned to a report called the Common Vulnerability and Exposure. And it's like this distributed database, which is shared around the world so people know what they're talking about. And it results in this published list. We'll come back to that slide in a little bit. So just as an example, we had this interesting interaction with the Spanish National Authority. So they had a CV that they submitted, and they provided a couple of months to respond. before automatic disclosure. And this was a violation of our project security policy, where we wait for a problem to be fixed, and then we wait for a couple of releases until everybody's had a chance to be updated, and then we do the public disclosure. Um, so this discussion resulted in like a request to contact the actual security researcher that made the report, because the way I figure it, they're a member of the community, and to see if they even want a fix. They might not want a fix, they might just be wanting to let us know. Unfortunately, we were treated as a hostile vendor, and that's a poor experience. So, kind of threatening, no communication, and impasse. Um, and there's some tensions here. In many cases, the reporter needs to file a CVE in order to get paid. The authority needs the CVE fix their damaging Spanish society, which supports you, I guess. And the public policy is set up to support public safety. So, like, I really get where everyone's coming from, but in this case, once again, I'm sorry, but this is a little bit further along the thing. I'm sorry we're trapped in this conversation and you're not understanding me. Um, yeah.
We might come to this later, but this all boils down to people thinking of software as something you buy and sell. And in that kind of relationship, this idea of reporting a vulnerability and waiting for a fix from a vendor, it works all right. But we are in free, liberal, open source software when you can fix the software itself by yourself, and that makes you part of the community. And there's this breach, this gap of understanding that it challenge it shapes all the interactions when you have this vendor customer relationship, or when you have this you can edit the source code yourself relationship. It shapes the relationship, and I don't think that the Inzibe people are aware of that reshaping.
At the very least, their policies are not yet aware. So this is where my next Canadian translation comes from. So who is familiar with the Canadian concept of saying a? So one of the ways this works, I'm not a linguist, so I don't know the way the term works, but a Canadian will keep talking at you very, very quickly, and occasionally they'll say a, and then they'll keep talking. But A was your cue to either agree with them and just kind of go or something, or to interrupt with your own opinion. So it's this little conversation break when the Canadian's talking too much. A, and then it gives the opportunity for someone else A to take over. Uh,
Yeah, so I was reading about the CRA when it came out because I'm this kind of person who can try and read legal code. It's not that different than computer code once you get the gist of it. And my analysis of the CRA is basically this thing, the thing at the right. If you want to be as if you are an open source developer and you are worried about the CRA, and you might be because it's a heavy legislation that is imposed on every creator of software, even hobbyists, you should be aware of this kind of demands or requirements, which if you're not doing a half-ass job, you're already meeting. So it's like you don't do a bot job means don't introduce known vulnerabilities. If you know what an SQL injection is and you are putting just a tiny measure to avoid SQL injections, you are already complying with the first point. Just you are if you be aware of buffer overflows and SQL injections and cross-site attacks and that kind of stuff. You don't have to do a perfect job. Just don't do anything stupid. Then there's this concept of software bill of materials in the CRA. If you have a list of dependencies in your code, you're fine. That meets the definition of a software bill of materials, and we will argue that that is indeed a software bill of materials.
So like requirements.txt for Python or Maven POM for Java.
Package.json for JavaScript, etc., etc. You need to have a vulnerability policy and inform ENISA of any vulnerabilities that reach you. But that vulnerability policy might as well be I don't care. I'm not going to fix it. It's a policy. It's a valid policy. I have a policy. I comply with the CRA. If you want to fix it yourself. That's a policy. And I think that's the policy that we should push for in the free and libre open source world. Then there is this thing that you need to prioritize vulnerabilities over bugs, over features, which is sensible, and we kind of all do it. So that's it. If you're not really working on a project because it has been shelved and you're not no longer actively working on it, you don't have to fix a vulnerability. You are still prioritizing vulnerabilities over bug fixes, over new features. You're not working on any. You're complying with the CRA.
What about your offer updates?
Oh yeah, you need to publish new versions, of course. But if you're just publishing on npm or on any package manager of any kind, you're already offering updates.
So the next update might be when I pay you.
Also, bear in mind that something that we can do as developers is impose our opinion and impose our point of view. A lot of the times, in my experience, we software developers believe that we have no legal power to fight against the very complicated lawmaking process. And the thing that we can do is make our stand. And in this point, offer updates is okay, there's the Git repo, there's the update. That's it. I'm complying. Oh, if you have been following social media, this point of view of I'm not gonna fix it or I have reign over my project has been very visible in the curl project, which every piece of hardware, every piece of embedded hardware uses curl these days. Anything that makes an HTTP request uses curl these days, and it's maintained by one Swedish guy, I believe, this Daniel Stenberg, and it has been a prime example. It has been the canary in the coal mine of how people are trying to impose their view on CRA and make it and these kind of weird incentives that are being created. So something that companies do is ask for things for free. And in this case is okay, me as a company, I need some CRA certification and I need to get some information. I'm going to ask for that information for nothing in return because I can do it because I'm used to it. The first step um, in every deal, so to speak, is to ask for everything in return for nothing. And people are doing that with open source software developers. We tend to be nice people and we tend to report and we tend to try to help. And the right response is nope, I'm not going to give you any information because you can get it yourself. The people who you are paying $200 an hour can get it by themselves. If you want me to get it for you, well, why don't you give me money? If you give me money, I will do things for you. Believe it or not, it works. Have you tried it?
So back to our experience over in GeoServer, we updated our security policy in response to this interaction with the Spanish numbering authority. So we learned from the curl example, wildly used, subject to lots of CVE reports, and their response was to become their own numbering authority. So the other, like Spanish government, wouldn't wildly start assigning numbers and publishing vulnerabilities outside of their control, allows accepting and rejecting of reports, and provides some control about disclosure. I should point out that subsequent to this, they've just decided, you know what, we're just going to publish every report that comes in as it comes in, right? Yeah. So our response from GeoServer is we use the GitHub security advisory database because we're using the GitHub Forge. And that gave us some control over when we can publish. And we decided we'd start with that as a trial before suggesting that, say, OSGeo becomes a common numbering authority. Uh, the other thing is we learned that responsible disclosure is out of date and passe and not fashionable anymore. And we now need to say coordinated vulnerability disclosure. So we did a little search and replace and updated that. And the response from the security researcher was so we did find the security researcher, and they were far kinder than the numbering authority, but they resolved this issue with a documentation fix rather than actually fixing the software problem. And once that documentation fix was in our stable and maintenance releases, we published the CVE. We did complain, like they complained that it was only a doc fix and not safe by default. But dude, that's the fix you gave us. So this is a case where, once again, I'm sorry. And in this case, the sorry is, I'm sorry I'm trapped in this conversation with you and I can't seem to get out. Uh, so we're going up the scale here. Um, so this change to the GeoServer was this proposal here, revising our security policy and CV handling. We added this little section to report via GitHub, and we renamed our policy to coordinated vulnerability disclosure. So even though this was a big policy change, it was only a little bit of a change to what we were already doing. Um, we also updated our kind of security procedures, how we handle things. So we've got this GeoServer security email list. We made it really clear that this is based on, much like commit access, it's based on trust. So ongoing participation is required. If you're too busy, rejoin when you have capacity. If your employer wants to know what the fuck's going on, they need to give you time to participate in this list. Um, and this is a way for companies, organizations in our community, in order to get an inside track, they need to pay for that inside track with their time. And if you're a member of the public, you're welcome to join our security list. We'll give you a few vulnerability reports to assess and see if they're worthwhile. And you can gradually earn the trust in order to know what's going on. Um, and also, if you don't have that kind of time, please talk to our service providers and they can participate on your behalf. So we also have some guidance for the vulnerability reports we see out there. So if it's a public issue, we close the issue and we send a link to our policy. If it's a public email, we do a private reply. If it's a private email, we invite them to join the list. If it's social media, this is really sad when it happens, security policy. And if it's a public CV, we make a PR to clarify or we try to formally dispute it. That hasn't been very successful. So this is in the case where we're um, in the I'm sorry situation where, oh, I'm sorry that you exist and I'm trapped in this conversation with you. Now we're on to disclosure. So here's the example here where it was a log file path vulnerability. If you configure the log file location, you can like overwrite random files, and that's apparently troubling. There's some workarounds. Set the log file location with an environment variable, and you're fine. And that guidance was added to the documentation. I'd much rather see a real fix in the source code, but well, it's something. We also had a chance to test our security policy with fire. So we had a 9.8 critical vulnerability last year. We went through our security policy. We patched things. We made sure people had a couple weeks to update, and we published on June 30th. On the July 1st, we actually had security systems auto scanning for the vulnerability. On July 2nd, there were active exploits in the wild, and they had lists of tens of thousands of GeoServer systems that were vulnerable that hadn't updated yet. July 15th, it was on the known vulnerability exploit list. July 5th, there was a deadline for US government folks to update their GeoServer or die. September 6th, this was being used in attacks in the Asia Pacific region. Later in the year, it was used to disrupt some of the elections here in Europe. The security stuff escalates pretty quickly. And we learned a couple things. There's how we patch the releases. But one of the things was we don't have a good way to contact all the GeoServer instances out there in the event something is urgent. We had another issue this year. So far, similar level of excitement, but no active exploits. But we don't have a good way to contact our users. I'm running out of time, so I'm going ahead here. Kindness. This is the long game. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to your developer community. They're the group that sustains your project. Also recognize that the reporter is stressed. They may not have much flexibility due to legal obligations around vulnerability disclosure. It's also a sustainability challenge, so do not be shy about asking for support. You were also one of the people to be kind to. So here's an apology I offered to someone. Security is also a team effort. Here's an example where someone is demanding a response because of their 90-day policy. And I'm just saying, hey, if you want to maintain your timeline, please allocate resources to assist as a member of the community. And if a fix is not available, here's someone saying if a fix is not available, we'll have to remove your software from our system. Well, that is an option.
If I got this from time to time, if you don't fix this, we will stop using the software. And my answer is, so what? I don't lose anything. I don't have any relationship with you. I don't mind. Something that I wanted to end with is that there's this thing called Gotthard's law, which states that any measure which becomes a goal stops being a good measure. So if by security you means that you will be safer, that's a good kind of security. If security means you have to report vulnerabilities, then that becomes a goal, and your goal is to just report vulnerabilities, no matter if they affect you or not, and that eats up time, etc., etc.
We have noticed that things like a bug bounty really encourages the security researchers to flood you.